If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." The voice broke through the frigid silence of the tenement, like a pebble tossed in a still lake. Nathaniel Cross paused on the landing, turning slowly toward the source. There she sat on the bottom step of a worn-out staircase, bundled in a coat that was 2 sizes too big, her tiny legs poking out from underneath. One of them was stiff, braced with bandages and a rusted metal support. Her cap slipped down over her brow, but her dark brown eyes stared straight at him, clear, unwavering. He blinked. "What did you say?" The girl smiled, as if they were old friends catching up. "I said if you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you something important." "But only you." Nathaniel arched an eyebrow. "You often ask strange men to carry you?" She didn't hesitate. "Only the ones who look like they forgot how to smile." That caught him off guard. Her delivery was too confident, too deliberate. It wasn't sass, it was instinct. He stepped closer, his towering frame in stark contrast to hers. "You're not afraid of me?" She grinned wider. "Should I be?" "I'm a stranger," he said, voice low. "You don't know what kind of man I am." Her answer was a laugh, light, unbothered. "If you were dangerous, you wouldn't have paused when I spoke." "You hesitated." "That's how I know." Nathaniel stared at her for a moment. There was something eerie in her calmness, something unsettling in how she seemed to read him like a file already opened. She coughed a dry, painful sound. When she finished, she looked back up at him with a shrug. "Well, I'm not getting up there on my own." He hesitated. Then, against every instinct he'd honed over decades in boardrooms and war zones of negotiation, he stepped forward and bent down. "What's your name?" he asked as he lifted her carefully. "Anna Green." The name landed oddly in his ears. He'd heard it before. Somewhere in the echo of a memory. Behind a door he hadn't dared open in years. "I'm Nathaniel," he said. "I know," she replied, snuggling into the warmth of his coat. "You own this place. You're the reason the hot water only works twice a week." "That's not exactly how this works," he muttered. "Sure," she said, unconvinced. "And I'm not a unicorn." By the second flight, he was breathing heavier than he wanted to admit. "You're lucky I still have working knees." "I'm lucky I can still talk," she replied. "Some days I can't." He glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "I have a condition," she said casually. "It's genetic. Something wrong with my bone marrow. Mom says it's rare, passed through bloodlines, sometimes skips generations." That word genetic hit him in the gut. He stopped walking. "What's it called?" "I don't remember the full name," Anna said, drawing shapes in the air with her fingers. "Starts with an M, I think." "Sounds like a spell from Harry Potter." Nathaniel resumed climbing, a growing unease blooming in his chest. "Apartment 4C, she said, pointing as they reached the 4th floor. He set her down in the waiting wheelchair. "You promised me a secret," he reminded her. She leaned in and whispered, "I think I was supposed to meet you today." "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because," she trailed off, eyes suddenly serious. "You feel like a missing piece." Before he could press her, the door behind them swung open. A woman in faded hospital scrubs stood in the doorway, keys still dangling from her hand. Her hair was tied in a loose bun. Her eyes familiar, fierce. Disbelieving locked onto Nathaniel. "Diane," he breathed, stunned. She stared at him, color draining from her face. "Nathaniel?" For a second, neither of them moved. Anna turned her head between the two. "Wait. You two know each other?" Diane's voice came out sharp. "What are you doing here?" "I was inspecting the building," he said slowly, barely able to tear his eyes from her. "And I found her downstairs." Diane stepped toward her daughter protectively. "She shouldn't talk to strangers." "She didn't," Anna said brightly. "She talked to an old friend, Anna," Diane warned. But Nathaniel wasn't listening anymore. His mind raced. Anna Green. Diane. Genetic disorder. Rare. His voice cracked as he asked, "What kind of genetic condition does she have?" Diane's eyes narrowed. "Why do you care?" He looked at Anna again, at her dark curls. Her eyes, his eyes, now that he saw them, 1,000 questions pressed into his chest. Was it possible? Number, it couldn't be. But, because, he said softly, I think she might be mine. If you feel for the character, hit like and show your support. And comment where you're watching from. You never know. Someone nearby might be watching with you too. Diane's lips parted. But no sound came out. Anna blinked between them. Okay, now I want to know the secret. Nathaniel's heart thudded. So did Diane's. And neither of them had the courage to speak it out loud. Not yet. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air in the hallway was thick, almost too heavy for breathing. Nathaniel's eyes stayed fixed on Diane's, searching for something, anything, that would confirm or deny the storm now rising in his chest. But Diane looked away first. Inside, she muttered, stepping aside. Both of you. Anna wheeled herself through the doorway like this was all perfectly normal. So, you two used to kiss or something? Anna, Diana snapped. Nathaniel's lips twitched, not quite smiling. He followed them into the cramped apartment. It smelled of lavender and antiseptic, with faint traces of home-cooked food and fatigue. The living room was small, just big enough for a couch with frayed arms, a lamp with a crooked shade, and a wooden shelf lined with well-worn children's books and a single photo frame. He glanced at the photo. It was Diane, a little younger, smiling in a faded yellow sundress, holding a baby swaddled in pink. The child had his nose. Diane noticed where he was looking and walked over, turning the frame face down. Don't. Why didn't you tell me? He asked softly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved to the small kitchen and began pouring water into a kettle. Her movements sharp, controlled. Because when I found out I was pregnant, you were halfway across the world negotiating billion-dollar mergers. You were unreachable for months. Remember? Africa, London, Singapore. And when you finally came back, you weren't the same. You had your empire to protect. I had a daughter to raise. He stepped closer, voice low. You didn't even give me a choice. Diane turned, arms folded, back straight like a wall between them. You want the truth? I didn't think you'd want her. Not when you were already planning to bulldoze everything standing in the way of your next big deal. I knew she'd be another liability. Nathaniel flinched, but didn't argue. Anna sat nearby, watching them with wide eyes, her head cocked to the side like she was trying to read a foreign language. Is this the part where I find out I'm the lost princess of some small country? Diane sighed heavily. Anna. Baby. Give us a minute. Anna pouted but wheeled herself toward the bedroom. Okay. But if anyone starts yelling, I'm coming back with popcorn. The door clicked softly behind her. Nathaniel turned toward Diane, his voice tighter now. You said she has a genetic disorder? She was diagnosed 3 years ago, Diane said. Something in the marrow, passed down recessively. We've tried treatments, trials, everything. But she's still getting weaker. Is she on the donor registry? Diane nodded. The hardness in her expression cracking. Has been for 18 months, but matches are rare. Too rare. I work nights just to cover part of the meds. He exhaled slowly, his chest tightening. And no one in your family's a match? Number I already tested. Nathaniel hesitated. You didn't think maybe I should have been tested too? The look she gave him said everything. Then softer he added. Let me do it now, tomorrow. Diane stared at him. What happens if you are the match? I give, he said simply. Just like that? He nodded. Just like that. Silence stretched between them. This wasn't the man she remembered. The man who left her behind, chasing capital ventures and global accolades. This was someone quieter, older, maybe even someone who'd lost too much already. She looked down. I never hated you, Nathaniel. I just couldn't raise her in your world. He stepped back, letting the weight of those words settle. I don't want to disrupt anything, he said. But if I'm her father, if there's even a chance, I need to know. And I need to help. Before Diane could reply, the bedroom door creaked open, and Anna peeked out. Are we done with the grown-up tension now? She asked cheerfully. Diane cracked a small smile. Come here, sweetheart. Anna wheeled out slowly and looked at Nathaniel. You're still here. Most people don't stick around after Mom gets serious. Nathaniel crouched beside her, leveling his gaze with hers. Anna, I have a question. That condition you mentioned earlier, did the doctors say it came from your dad? Anna nodded. They said he must have had the gene, but I've never met him. Mom says he left before I was born, but I think maybe she was just trying to protect me. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Would you mind if I did a test? To see if maybe I could help? She tilted her head. Like a math test? He laughed softly. No, like a blood test. To see if I'm connected to you. In a very special way. Anna studied his face, then smiled. Okay, but if it turns out we're not connected, can we still be friends? He smiled, then nodded. Absolutely. Good, she said, yawning. Because I like your voice. It sounds like a tree. He blinked. A tree? A strong one. The kind that doesn't fall, even when it's windy. Nathaniel looked at Diane, who was now quietly crying in the kitchen. I'll make the appointment, she whispered. Tomorrow morning. You'll get the test. He nodded, rising to his feet. Thank you. As he reached for the door, Anna called out, Hey, Penguin Man. He turned. Don't be late again. This building doesn't have a second elevator. I wasn't aware it had one at all, he said, smiling. Anna grinned. Exactly. He stepped out into the hallway, heart pounding, head spinning. For decades, he'd built towers that reached the sky, acquired companies across continents, made headlines with cold logic and sharp strategy, and now, a tiny girl with a crooked leg and an honest laugh might be the one thing to bring it all home. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Cross didn't know what came next, but he was ready to find out. The morning sun broke reluctantly through the haze over Harlem, casting long, sleepy beams across the cracked pavement. Nathaniel Cross stood outside the Columbia Pediatric Oncology Unit, his tailored coat buttoned tight against the early chill. Beside him, Diane held a steaming cup of coffee, untouched. He glanced sideways. You sure she's okay with this? Diane nodded slowly. She was up before the alarm. Picked out her own headscarf. Said, and I quote, I gotta look fabulous when they take my DNA. Nathaniel allowed a faint smile, though his stomach was in knots. He had faced shareholders, litigators, journalists, even presidents, but never this. Never the possibility of a child he didn't know about, carrying a burden she never should have had to. They sat together in a small waiting area, surrounded by pastel walls and teddy bear posters. Anna emerged from the exam room, a colorful bandage on her arm and a lollipop in hand. That was it? She asked. They poked me like I was a balloon. Nathaniel stood. You were very brave. I didn't even cry, she bragged. Not even a tear. But the nurse dropped her pen 3 times. I think I made her nervous. You have that effect, Diane murmured. Anna handed Nathaniel a second lollipop. For you, grape. It's the grown-up flavor. He took it, unsure of what to do with it. Thanks. I'll treasure it. As they walked out together, the wind picked up. Nathaniel instinctively reached out, steadying Anna's wheelchair as they reached the ramp. She looked up at him, thoughtful. You look nervous, she said. He glanced at her. I am. Why? He hesitated. Because if the test says I'm your dad, it changes everything. Anna's eyes narrowed. You don't want that? No, it's not that, he said gently. I just don't want to disappoint you. Or your mom. She gave him a long look. You're already better than most of the adults I know. And I know at least 15. Nathaniel chuckled, the tension easing slightly. That's good to know. They returned to Diane's apartment later that morning. Nathaniel lingered, awkward at first, but soon settled into the small space like it held more gravity than any penthouse suite. He helped fix lunch, peanut butter sandwiches, sliced apples, and boxed juice. Anna insisted on reading her favorite book aloud while they ate, pausing dramatically at each page turn. You have a narrator's voice, she informed Nathaniel. Very Morgan Freeman. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. No. Afterward, Anna napped on the couch, curled beneath a patchwork quilt. Diane stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes while Nathaniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. She doesn't let people in easily, Diane said quietly. She watches them, weighs them, but she took to you fast. I didn't do anything special. You showed up, Diane replied. That's more than most. He studied her face, softened now, not the fierce wall she'd been the day before. There were lines near her eyes he hadn't remembered, and a weight to her that hadn't been there years ago, but there was strength, too, steel beneath the softness. She's incredible, he said. She's all I've got, Diane whispered. Every day. I wake up praying this won't be the day the doctors call with bad news. And I'm tired, Nathaniel, so damn tired. He reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. What? She nodded, not looking at him, but didn't pull away. 3 days later, the test results came. Nathaniel stood in his office, a corner tower of glass and steel, 30 stories above the city, and stared at the envelope in his hand. His assistant had placed it there with a puzzled look. It came directly from Columbia, she said. Is everything all right, Mr. Cross? He hadn't answered. Now, alone, he broke the seal with trembling fingers. It was there, in black and white, a 99.8% match. Anna Green was his daughter. He sat down slowly, the weight of that truth settling over him like snow. He had a child. A daughter. She'd been out there for 8 years growing up, fighting illness, smiling like the world owed her nothing and he hadn't known. And now, she might not have much time. He picked up the phone. Diane answered on the 3rd ring. It's confirmed, he said simply. She's mine. There was a long silence. Then Diane whispered, I figured. I want to help. In every way I can. Not just money. I want to be present. She didn't respond for a moment. Then come to the hospital tomorrow. They're starting the next treatment cycle. They said if we have a viable donor, they can move fast. I'll be there. The next morning, he returned to Columbia, but this time not as an observer. He was the patient. He was the donor. The procedure wasn't without discomfort. But he didn't complain. Not once. Anna visited him in recovery, a get-well card taped to a juice box. You look pale, she said, crawling up beside him. Thanks for the honesty. You're welcome. I brought you juice. Don't say I never give you anything. He took the box. You know I'd do anything for you, right? She looked at him long, steady, quiet. Yeah, she said finally. I know now. That night, Diane sat beside his hospital bed long after Anna had fallen asleep in the corner chair. I hated you, back then, she admitted. I thought you forgot me like an expired contract. Nathaniel looked at her, eyes tired but clear. I never forgot. I just didn't know what I left behind. Well, she said softly, now you do. And as the monitors hummed softly and the city lights twinkled outside the window, Nathaniel Cross, billionaire, builder of empires, closed his eyes for the first time in years and finally felt like he belonged somewhere. Not in the world he'd built, but in the world he had almost lost. It rained the next morning. Not a downpour, just a quiet, persistent drizzle that made the whole city seem slower, softer. Nathaniel sat in the passenger seat of Diane's aging Toyota Corolla, hands resting on his knees, watching the blur of streetlights on the windshield. Anna was asleep in the back, mouth slightly open. Her tiny body curled under her favorite fleece blanket. Her treatment had gone well better than expected. The doctors said the transplant had taken. They used the word hope again, not as a distant wish, but as a possibility. Nathaniel stared out the window. She looks so small when she sleeps. Diane nodded, her hands tight on the wheel. She is small, but she's stronger than most grown men I know. She didn't get that from me, he murmured. Diane gave him a look. Number she got that from both of us. They pulled up to the apartment, and Diane carried Anna in while Nathaniel brought in the prescriptions. The old elevator was still broken. Halfway up the stairs, Nathaniel chuckled. This is becoming a theme. Diane looked back. Penguin Man strikes again. She remembers everything, doesn't she? She does, and she forgets nothing. Inside, the apartment felt warmer than before. Maybe it was the lighting, or maybe it was the way Anna's books were stacked neatly beside the couch now, or how 2 mugs sat waiting on the kitchen counter. Nathaniel poured Diane tea and sat across from her as the rain tapped the windows. "I keep thinking," he said, stirring slowly, "how close I came to never knowing." Diane didn't respond at first. She stared at her tea, lips pursed. "I was angry," she said finally. "Not just at you. At life. At myself. I didn't want to be the woman who begged for help. So I raised her alone, even when it meant I slept 2 hours a night." Nathaniel reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it slowly and pushed it across the table. Inside was a delicate silver necklace. A single charm shaped like a tree with roots curling inward. Diane blinked. "What is this?" "It belonged to my mother," he said. "She wore it every day, said it reminded her of where she came from. I want Anna to have it." Diane picked it up gently, brushing her thumb over the charm. "She'll love this. I want her to have everything I can give." Diane looked up. "Including a father?" He nodded. "If you'll let me." She studied him, her gaze soft but cautious. "This isn't just about guilt, is it?" "No," he said. "This is about redemption. And responsibility. And love." A knock on the door broke the silence. Diane stood, frowning. "It's nearly 9. She opened the door to reveal a man in a slick trench coat, clipboard in hand, badge hanging from a lanyard. "Miss Green? I'm Aaron Jameson, Child Protective Services." Nathaniel rose instantly. "What's this about?" The man glanced at Nathaniel, eyes narrowing. "And you are?" "Nathaniel Cross. I'm Anna's." "Let's discuss this inside," Jameson said, stepping forward without waiting for permission. Diane looked stunned. "What's going on?" Jameson pulled out papers. "We received an anonymous report regarding the medical care and living conditions of Anna Green. Standard protocol. We're here to assess the home environment." Nathaniel's eyes darkened. "You're telling me someone called CPS? After what she's been through?" "Sir," Jameson said calmly, "we're just following procedure." Diane's voice trembled. "We just came back from the hospital. She had a transplant. She's finally doing better." "I understand, ma'am," Jameson said, "but we have to check for ourselves." Anna stirred on the couch, her eyes opened groggily. "Mom? Who's that?" Diane rushed to her side, gently stroking her hair. "It's okay, baby. Just someone asking questions." Anna's gaze drifted to Jameson. "Is he a doctor?" "No, sweetheart," Diane said softly. "Just someone making sure we're okay." Nathaniel stepped forward. "You want to talk about care? Anna has the best doctors in the city. She's stronger today because we fought like hell to get her here." Jameson flipped through the file. "And who exactly are you to the child?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "I'm her father." Jameson raised an eyebrow. "Documented?" Nathaniel glanced at Diane, who nodded slowly. "The DNA test was done this week. Columbia Medical has the report." Jameson scribbled something in his notes. "We'll follow up. In the meantime, I'll need to take photographs of the living area and ask a few more questions." For the next 20 minutes, he poked through cabinets, examined the bedroom, asked Diane for income details and Anna's medical history. Anna watched quietly, her small fingers twisting in the blanket. Finally, Jameson returned to the living room. "Thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch." When he left, Diane locked the door and leaned against it, shaking. Nathaniel stood frozen. "Someone did this on purpose." Diane nodded, pale. "Someone wants to make us look unfit. But who?" She looked at him, fear creeping into her features. "You've made a lot of enemies, Nathaniel." His mind was already moving names, deals, rival executives, old grudges. Anna tugged his sleeve. "Are they going to take me away?" He knelt beside her. "No one is taking you anywhere." "You promise?" "I swear it." And in that moment, Nathaniel Cross knew someone was coming for them, not out of concern for Anna, but out of spite, power, or fear. He had stepped back into Diane's life, back into fatherhood, and now something or someone wanted to punish them for it. But he wasn't the man he used to be, and he would not back down. Not this time. The next morning, Nathaniel arrived at his corporate headquarters earlier than usual. The skyline outside his office windows was still gray with pre-dawn fog, but his mind was already racing. He didn't sit. Instead, he paced his phone in one hand, a legal pad in the other, scribbling names and question marks beside each. He had enemies, sure. When you build an empire by buying out struggling firms, there are always those who resent you. But this wasn't just about business. This was personal. Someone had called CPS on Diane and Anna. Someone wanted to destabilize them at the very moment they were finding peace. His assistant Karen tapped lightly on the doorframe. "Mr. Cross, your 8 a.m. board prep has been moved. But someone named Terrence Ballard is in the lobby. Says he worked with you at Horizon Holdings. Should I send him away?" Nathaniel froze. Terrence Ballard. That name hadn't passed his lips in over a decade. Number, send him up. Minutes later, Terrence walked into the office taller than Nathaniel remembered, heavier, but with the same cold gleam in his eyes. His suit was expensive, the watch on his wrist even more so. "Well, well," Terrence said, flashing a tight smile. "Never thought I'd see the inside of this glass palace again." Nathaniel didn't return the smile. "What do you want?" Terrence leaned against the conference table. "Word travels. Fast. I hear you found yourself a little family, a sick daughter, a woman from your past. Very touching." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Did you call CPS? Now why would I do that?" Terrence asked innocently. "I'm just here to offer a warning. Your name's in too many headlines lately, Nate. Some people don't like that. You always had a way with veiled threats." Terrence straightened. "Not veiled, just honest. You're trying to rebrand yourself as the noble father figure. But some of us remember who you really are. How many companies did you gut for profit? How many people lost everything while you gained?" Nathaniel stepped closer. "You came here to lecture me? Or to tell me you're the one stirring trouble?" Terrence's smile faded. "I came to tell you this. Walk away. From Diane. From the girl. Go back to your towers and your mergers. Because if you keep poking around, things are going to get very, very messy." Nathaniel didn't flinch. "Get out." Terrence turned to leave, then paused at the door. "She's just a kid, Nate. A sick one. You think the press won't rip that apart the second someone leaks her records? Think again." The door clicked shut behind him. Nathaniel stood alone, hands trembling not with fear, but with rage. Ballard had just confirmed it without saying the words. He was behind the CPS report, and that meant this was war. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel met Diane outside Anna's school. She was waiting beneath a wide oak tree, arms crossed tightly. Anna was still inside, finishing a short tutoring session. He briefed her on the meeting with Terrence. "He used to be your partner, right?" Diane asked. "Years ago," Nathaniel replied. "Until I found out he was embezzling from Horizon's pension fund, I turned him in. He lost everything. Apparently, he never forgot. So this is revenge? More than that, he's playing the long game. He knows my reputation is fragile now that I'm trying to shift gears to be something more than the shark they remember." Diane looked away, her voice bitter. "He's targeting Anna." Nathaniel's hands curled into fists. "Not if I can help it." She studied him. "You really mean to stay, don't you? This isn't just a phase or a photo op for your next press release." He met her eyes. "I've done a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of, but I'll spend every day from now on making sure Anna's safe. I'm not walking away." A bell rang in the distance. Moments later, Anna came out, beaming, waving a paper in the air. Guess who aced her vocabulary test? Nathaniel knelt, grinning. "Was it me?" She giggled. "You wish." That night, Nathaniel reviewed his private security logs. He had increased surveillance around Diane's building and added protection to Anna's school. Then he made a call. "Peter," he said into the phone, speaking to his longtime head of security. "I need everything you can dig up on Terrence Ballard. Associates, recent activity, offshore assets. Discreetly. You think he's planning more?" "I don't think. I know." Peter hesitated. Nathaniel, if you go after him, this could go public fast. I'm not going after him for vengeance, Nathaniel said coldly. I'm protecting my daughter. The next day brought another surprise. Anna was watching television when she called out, "Hey, Mom, Mr. Cross, you're on the news." They rushed to the screen. A reporter was reading from a teleprompter. Sources claim billionaire Nathaniel Cross has quietly taken parental responsibility for a previously unacknowledged child, now undergoing treatment for a rare genetic disorder. A photo of Anna from the hospital flashed on screen. Diane gasped. How did they? Nathaniel didn't wait. He grabbed his phone, calling his PR director. Get that segment pulled. Every channel, every platform. Now. Too late. The story had broken. Within an hour, reporters were outside Diane's building. Neighbors whispered. Flashbulbs popped from behind parked cars. Inside, Anna clung to her stuffed giraffe, wide-eyed. Why are people outside yelling? Nathaniel knelt beside her, voice calm but steady. Because someone told them something they shouldn't have. But you don't need to be scared, okay? We're going to fix this. That night, Nathaniel issued a public statement. He didn't deny paternity. He didn't dodge questions. He stood before the press and said, "My name is Nathaniel Cross, and yes, I recently discovered I have a daughter. Her name is Anna. She's the brightest, kindest person I've ever met. And I will do everything in my power to protect her." The press buzzed. The internet roared. But for the first time in his career, Nathaniel didn't care about perception. He cared about truth, about fatherhood, about redemption. As the press conference ended, he turned to Diane and Anna waiting quietly behind the curtain. "Come on," he said, offering Anna his hand. "Let's go home." And this time, when she took it, she didn't hesitate. By morning, the world had changed. Nathaniel's phone buzzed nonstop calls from board members, shareholders, journalists, former colleagues, even estranged relatives who had never called except to borrow money or boast at galas. His inbox was flooded with everything from congratulations to thinly veiled threats. His social media feeds were a battlefield of support, curiosity, and vicious speculation. He ignored it all. Inside Diane's small apartment, the curtains were drawn, the lights low. Anna sat cross-legged on the floor. Crayons scattered around her like confetti, drawing a scene of 3 stick figures, one tall with glasses, one in a big dress, and one in a wheelchair with a superhero cape. "That's you," she said, pointing to the caped figure. "You're the superhero now, Dad." Nathaniel's heart clenched at the word. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. So casual. So natural. "I like the cape," he said, crouching beside her. "But I don't think I've earned it yet." Anna shrugged. "You showed up. That's how heroes start." Diane watched from the kitchen, arms folded, her expression soft but guarded. She's been waiting for someone to show up for a long time. Nathaniel met her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." The news coverage had taken a toll on Diane's nerves. Cameras had camped outside the building. Neighbors whispered louder now. A reporter had even slipped a note under the door offering payment for an exclusive. Nathaniel had increased security again, posting a quiet guard in the lobby. But the tension remained. That afternoon, a package arrived unmarked, no return address. Diane opened it cautiously. Inside was a USB stick and a printed note that read, "You don't know what he's hiding, but we do." Nathaniel frowned. "Let me see that." He took the USB and plugged it into his laptop. Heart thudding. A single folder opened. Inside, scanned documents, corporate records, and dozens of emails, some with his name, others with the name Ballard, highlighted in red. Diane leaned over his shoulder. "What is all this?" He scrolled through. "It's from the Horizon days, but some of these, I've never seen them. Look, this one shows Terrence made donations under my name. Illegal ones. Using my credentials. He was framing you? Yes, or maybe saving this for leverage." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. "Someone just gave me the bullets to shoot back." He made another call to Peter, his head of security. Trace the package. I want to know who sent it and where they are now. And put eyes on Ballard if he makes a move. I want to know before he does. Entire. Peter's voice crackled on speaker. Already ahead of you. We intercepted a communication. He's planning a press campaign of his own, going to paint you as negligent, manipulative, using the girl for sympathy. His contacts in the press are old, but loyal. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Then we respond first. Diane raised an eyebrow. You're going to fight him in public? I'm going to protect my daughter, he said. And if the only way to do that is to drag every skeleton out of his closet, I'll do it. Later that evening, Nathaniel sat with Anna, reading aloud from one of her books. She'd fallen asleep halfway through chapter 3. Head resting against his arm. He didn't move, not even when his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Peter. Got a match on the fingerprints from the USB. You're not going to believe who sent it. A moment later, another name popped up. Riley Grant. Nathaniel stared at the screen. Riley had been his executive assistant for nearly 5 years before she'd vanished during the Horizon scandal. Everyone assumed she'd taken a payout to keep quiet. He looked at Diane, asleep on the couch now, head tilted to the side. Then he looked down at Anna, breathing softly, peacefully, finally at rest. He gently slipped his arm out and stood, moving into the kitchen to take the call. Peter, he said, keeping his voice low. Find Riley. I want to talk to her, quietly. No press, no police. You sure? I'm sure. The next day, he met Riley in a quiet diner in Queens. A world away from the towers and media frenzy. She looked older, tired, wearing a simple black coat and a hat pulled low. I figured it was time, she said without preamble. I saw what they did to you. What Ballard is still trying to do. Why now? Because I was part of it once, Riley admitted. And I've been running ever since. I thought I could disappear. But I watched your press conference. I saw the girl. And I thought, maybe you really changed. Nathaniel leaned forward. I have. But I need your help to finish what I should have finished years ago. She slid a small envelope across the table. Everything I've got. Names, bank records, off-the-book transactions. Ballard built his empire on the same lies he accused you of. Why help me? Riley hesitated. Because you have a daughter now, and because I wish someone had fought for me when I was a kid. Nathaniel took the envelope. Thank you. That night, back at the apartment, he laid the documents on the table. Diane skimmed through them, eyes wide. This is enough to destroy him. Not just him, Nathaniel said. It could drag Horizon back into the spotlight. Reopen investigations. Hurt innocent people too. Then what's the plan? He looked at her, eyes firm. We go public. Carefully. With the truth. No attacks. No drama. Just facts. She touched his hand. You're not the man I remember. He smiled faintly. Neither are you. We've both changed. And we've got something worth fighting for. Anna stirred in her sleep as the rain began again, tapping gently on the window pane like a soft warning or a quiet promise. Whatever storm came next, they were ready. Together. The first ray of sunlight broke through the haze as Nathaniel stepped onto the rooftop of his downtown office building. He needed airspace to think. Away from ringing phones, press releases, and the growing sense that every move he made now had 1,000 eyes watching. His mind churned with Riley's evidence. The documents were damning not just for Terrence Ballard but for other executives who had used Horizon as a personal vault. But going public with them wasn't a matter of dropping a file online. The stakes were higher now. There was Anna to think of. Diane, a family he hadn't expected but now couldn't live without. His phone buzzed. It was Diane. Anna's asking for you, she said, voice calm but with an edge he recognized as worry. She had a nightmare. Something about people in suits taking her away. Nathaniel felt his chest tighten. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, he was sitting on the edge of Anna's bed, gently brushing a lock of hair from her damp forehead. Her eyes were puffy, lashes still wet from tears. They were shouting, she whispered. Said you weren't really my dad. that you were dangerous. Nathaniel swallowed the lump rising in his throat. That's not true, baby. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that. She clutched his hand. But what if they try again? The man with the badge. They won't, he said firmly. I'll make sure of it. Down the hall, Diane waited, arms crossed, leaning against the wall. She's not just scared, Nathaniel. She's absorbing all of this. The reporters, the rumors, the fear. She's 8. She needs peace. I know, he said. That's why I'm doing this the right way. Quietly. Controlled. You think Ballard will play by those rules? No, he admitted. But if I go scorched earth, it won't just be him who burns. She'll get caught in the fire. Diane looked at him carefully. Then you better make damn sure your fire knows where to go. That afternoon, Nathaniel met with a trusted ally, Monica Reyes, a former federal prosecutor turned corporate ethics advisor. She sat across from him in a private boardroom, scanning the files Riley had compiled. This is heavy, she said. Real weight. If even half of this is verified, it's not just Ballard going down, it's half the senior network from the 2010 Horizon merger. Can we move without dragging Anna into it? Monica tapped a pen thoughtfully. You can, but you'll need a distraction, something to shift public interest before the real story drops. What kind of distraction? Something bigger than a scandal. A pivot. A new narrative. He frowned. Like what? Make your company the hero, she said. Announce a new foundation, medical research, pediatric support, whatever it is. Tie it to Anna's condition. Lead with vulnerability, not defense. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Create the story before they do. Exactly. Control the framing. Then, once the world sees you as a father fighting for his daughter, we let the truth about Ballard land like a hammer. That night, Nathaniel stood at the foot of Anna's bed again, this time with his laptop. I want to show you something, he said. She sat up, curious. Is it more lollipop stocks? He laughed. Number, it's something new. Something we're going to build together. Oh. He opened a presentation slide, bold letters across the screen. The Anna Cross Foundation for Rare Pediatric Illnesses. She blinked. That's my name. Yes, and it's going to help kids like you, kids with rare diseases who need support. We'll fund research, build programs, help families. Will I get to talk to other kids like me? If you want, can we send them superhero capes? Absolutely. Anna beamed. Then I want it to be real. The next morning, the foundation launch went public. Nathaniel held a press conference not from behind a podium, but sitting beside Diane and Anna on a sunlit hospital rooftop, surrounded by doctors, nurses, and other families. He didn't talk about stocks or scandals. He talked about second chances, about regret, about finding hope in the face of fear. The press ate it up, but more importantly, so did the public. Headlines changed. Billionaire's secret daughter was replaced by Cross-Launch's groundbreaking pediatric initiative. Talk show hosts shifted tone from suspicion to admiration. Social media flooded with support, but the silence from Terrence Ballard was deafening. Until it wasn't. 3 days later, a video was leaked grainy, shot from across a hotel bar. Nathaniel, years younger, drunk, laughing with executives. A voice his joking darkly about crushing the small firms and letting the pawns fall. It wasn't fake. But it was out of context. Old, cruel. Diane slammed the laptop shut. Is this what we're dealing with now? Ancient dirt meant to make you look heartless? I was heartless, Nathaniel said quietly. Then. But not now, she exhaled. Anna's going to hear about this. I'll tell her myself. When he did, Anna didn't cry. She simply looked at him and said, everyone makes mistakes. That's how they learn not to. He blinked back, the sting in his eyes. You're wise for someone so small. I'm tall when I sit up straight. He laughed, pulling her into his arms. That night, Nathaniel met Monica again. Ballard's trying to bait you, she warned. Don't rise to it. I won't, he said. But we're not waiting either. Release the documents. All of them. You're sure? He nodded. If the truth costs me everything, so be it. I won't build my daughter's future on a lie. Monica smiled. Then we move at dawn. And as the city slept, the story began to move slowly at first, like a distant tremor. But by morning, the earthquake would come. By 6 a.m., it had begun. The first article dropped on an independent investigative site known for taking down corporate giants. The headline was clinical, but devastating. Inside Horizon's house of cards. A decade of deceit. Beneath it were scanned documents, internal emails, and testimony all carefully verified, traced back to Terrence Ballard and his network of silent beneficiaries. The article didn't mention Nathaniel Cross until the third section, and when it did, it was to clarify that he had been framed, his credentials forged, and records altered behind his back. At 7 a.m., the second wave hit. Financial watchdogs and corporate law blogs began picking it up, connecting the dots. Ballard's offshore accounts, the shell companies, a charity front in Belize. Every link clicked led to more rot. By 9 a.m., CNN and CNBC were on it. The story had gone national. Nathaniel stood in his office, the city unfolding below like a giant, waking beast. Monica sat across from him, a tablet in hand. "We're trending in the right direction," she said, scrolling. "Support is flooding in. People are calling you brave for coming clean." Nathaniel exhaled. Not in relief, but in preparation. "It's not over. Ballard won't go quietly." Monica nodded. "Number, but he's bleeding now, and scared men make mistakes." Just then, Peter called. "We've got a tail on Ballard." He left his place in Tribeca around 8:30. Didn't go to his office. He's headed uptown, stopped at a storage facility. "Something's up. Keep eyes on him," Nathaniel said. "And make sure the security around Diane and Anna is doubled." "You expecting retaliation?" "I'd bet my last dollar on it." Across the city, Diane was sitting in the park with Anna, trying to give her some semblance of normalcy. Birds chirped. A man with a saxophone played a slow tune by the fountain. Anna was reading on a bench, feet swinging, while Diane kept scanning the path with wary eyes. Her phone buzzed. "Nathaniel, he's moving," he said. "We don't know what he's planning. But you're not safe alone. I'm sending a driver and 2 guards." Diane glanced at Anna. "We're fine for now." "No chances, Diane. Please, just this once. Let me be overprotective." She sighed. "All right, we'll wait here." Back downtown, Nathaniel met with his communications director, who looked pale but energized. "There's another piece coming out at noon," she said. Washington Post. "They've interviewed former Horizon staffers who confirm the cover-up." "Let it run," Nathaniel said. "We're getting requests for interviews. Everywhere." "No interviews," he said firmly. "Not until Ballard is cornered. Then I'll speak. One time. On my terms." Meanwhile, Ballard paced inside a dimly lit storage unit, surrounded by crates of old documents and a locked file cabinet. He was sweating. His phone buzzed constantly, but he ignored the calls. Finally, he made one of his own. A voice answered. "What do you want, Terrence?" "I need an extraction," Ballard snapped. "A plane, South America, today." There was a pause. Then the voice said, "You're toxic. Nobody's touching you now." Ballard slammed the phone down, breathing hard. By noon, his name was on every screen. By 1 p.m., federal investigators had arrived at his Tribeca condo. Cameras followed him as he was let out in handcuffs. He didn't say a word. Back at the apartment, Anna watched the footage with wide eyes. "Is that the man who tried to hurt us?" Nathaniel sat beside her, nodding. "Yes. He won't hurt anyone else now." Anna looked thoughtful. He looked scared. "He should be," Nathaniel said. He forgot that the truth always finds a way. Later that evening, the apartment was quiet. No cameras outside, no knocks on the door. Just peace, fragile but real. Diane made tea. Nathaniel sat on the couch, exhausted. "I keep thinking about all the people who believed him," she said. "Who doubted you? Who still might?" Nathaniel nodded. "That's the thing about redemption. It's not a door you walk through once. You've got to keep walking. Every day." Diane watched him for a moment. You're different from the man I used to know. Not all of it's good, he admitted. Maybe not, she said, but it's honest. That's more than most people can say. Anna walked in wearing a superhero cape and a nurse's cap over her head. I'm starting a hospital for superheroes. Only real ones allowed. Nathaniel smiled. You better make space for one tired dad. You're on the list, she said, crawling into his lap. But only if you rest tonight. Heroes need sleep too. Ugh. He wrapped his arms around her, eyes closing for a moment as she leaned her head against his chest. The world outside was still chaotic, still uncertain. But inside that tiny apartment, for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly where it belonged. And in that quiet, Nathaniel knew the storm had passed. But their story was only just beginning. The following week brought a stillness that felt almost foreign. Nathaniel found himself rising early not to face a new scandal, but to help Anna pick out the right sneakers for school. The buzz of the media had softened into a low hum. Terrence Ballard remained in federal custody, indicted on multiple counts of fraud, tax evasion, and witness tampering. The press had moved on mostly. Some platforms were still dissecting every detail of the Horizon scandal. But the narrative had shifted. Nathaniel wasn't the villain anymore. Yet peace, however welcome, didn't erase the weight he carried. He sat on a park bench one morning, watching Anna on the swings, her laughter rising in the crisp autumn air. Diane was sitting beside him, a thermos of coffee in her hand. Her eyes followed Anna too, but her silence told him her mind was somewhere else. You're thinking about the what-ifs, he said. She nodded, not denying it. What if Riley hadn't come forward? What if Ballard had gotten away with it? What if the story had spun the wrong direction? Nathaniel watched Anna soar upward. Then I wouldn't be sitting here with you. And maybe Anna would still be afraid of being left behind. Diane looked down at her coffee. She's still sick, Nathaniel. We've won a battle. But not the war. He nodded. I've been talking with Dr. Patel. There's a new trial gene therapy. It's experimental, risky, but if it works, she looked up. It could change everything. Yes, he said. We'd need to fly to Boston. The foundation would cover it. I've already started the paperwork. Diane hesitated. And you'd go with us? Nathaniel's voice was steady. There's no you and us. There's just us. I'm not backing out now. Back at the apartment, Anna was packing a small bag with her favorite books, crayons, and a fuzzy pink blanket. When Diane told her about the Boston trip, her reaction was quiet. Will it hurt? We don't know, Diane said gently. But they'll take care of you. And I'll be there. And so will he. Anna looked at Nathaniel, eyes searching. You promise? He crouched beside her. On everything I've got. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, medical briefings, and preparation. Nathaniel's team coordinated discreet transport, while Monica helped handle media inquiries with firm refusals. The Cross Foundation announced a new medical partnership, tying the Boston trial to a national awareness campaign on rare genetic diseases. The response was overwhelming. By the time they arrived in Boston, Anna was tired but excited. The hospital was bright, clean, full of murals and kind nurses who talked to her like an equal doctor. Patel met them at the entrance, smiling warmly. She's strong, he said after the first assessment. And brave. This therapy is a long shot, but her spirit gives her a better chance than most. They were shown to a private suite, quiet, filled with light. Anna curled up with her giraffe plush while Diane unpacked. Nathaniel stood by the window, watching the trees sway in the wind. That evening, as the city lights blinked on, Nathaniel sat beside Anna's bed while Diane stepped out for a call. Anna looked at him seriously. You're not just helping because you feel bad, right? He blinked. What? I heard people on television. They said you used to do bad things, hurt people, make money from sad stuff. Nathaniel took a deep breath. I did. I made choices I regret. She was quiet. So, are you trying to fix them with me? He shook his head. No, sweetheart. I'm trying to be better because of you. Not just for you. Her eyes studied him for a moment longer, then softened. Okay. I believe you. Nathaniel leaned over and kissed her forehead. Thank you. That means everything. The first day of treatment began early. Monitors beeped softly. Nurses moved like shadows. Anna was hooked up to IVs, her small body dwarfed by the equipment. Diane held her hand, whispering reassurances. Nathaniel sat close, his own fear masked behind a calm face. The hours dragged. Anna slept most of the time, her body reacting to the new therapy. Side effects were expected: fever, nausea, fatigue. But she didn't complain. On the second night, Diane broke down. They were in the hallway, sitting on a bench outside the suite. She stared ahead, eyes glassy. She's so small, and this is so much. Nathaniel placed a hand on her back. I know. What if it doesn't work? Then we try something else, he said softly. And we keep going. Because that's what she needs from us. Diane looked at him, her face drawn. You're not who I expected you to become. Neither are you, he said. But here we are. By the fourth day, Anna opened her eyes and smiled. It doesn't hurt as much today, she whispered. Diane and Nathaniel looked at each other, barely daring to hope. Dr. Patel entered, reviewing her vitals. Signs are encouraging, he said. Too early to declare anything, but this is good. Later that night, Nathaniel stood outside the hospital, phone in hand. He called Monica. I need you to start setting up regional branches of the foundation. West Coast first, then Midwest. You're expanding? Yes, he said. We're not done. This story isn't about me anymore. It's about every family still waiting for someone to fight for them. When he returned to the room, Anna was asleep again, her breathing slow but steady. Diane looked up from the chair beside her. She asked if you'd stay tonight. I already planned to, he said, pulling a blanket over his shoulder as he sat on the recliner next to the bed. Outside, Boston shimmered under a blanket of stars. Inside, a family that had once been shattered by silence was slowly being rebuilt. Not by grand gestures, but by quiet, unshakable love. It was late afternoon when Diane found the letter. Anna was asleep after a light lunch, the effects of the treatment making her tire easily. Nathaniel had stepped out to speak with Dr. Patel about a new round of lab results, leaving Diane alone in the room. She began tidying up the scattered coloring books and empty juice cartons when a worn notebook fell from Anna's backpack. A folded envelope was tucked inside, her daughter's name written in crayon across the front. To Mommy, if I don't wake up. Diane froze. Her hands trembled as she sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the letter. She knew she shouldn't open it. It was a private message, meant only for a moment no mother ever wanted to face. But something inside her, the ache of fear, the weight of maternal instinct, urged her to unfold it, to hear Anna's thoughts, to know what had been left unsaid. She opened the letter slowly. Dear Mommy, if you're reading this, I guess the medicine didn't work. Please don't be sad forever. I know you tried really hard to keep me safe. I saw it, even when you were tired or scared. I hope you and Mr. Nathaniel stay friends. He's nice now. He listens, and I think maybe he used to be very sad inside. Maybe I helped a little. I'm not scared. I know I'll be okay. Maybe I'll fly in the stars and watch over you like a real superhero. I love you forever. Tell Giraffe I'm okay too. Love. Anna. Tears streamed down Diane's face as she folded the letter and held it to her chest. She didn't make a sound. Crying wasn't new to her. It had visited many nights since Anna's diagnosis, but this was different. This was a window into her daughter's soul, and it broke her. When Nathaniel returned, he found Diane sitting still, the letter beside her. She didn't try to hide it. She wrote it weeks ago, Diane said softly. Probably didn't even remember it was in her bag. Nathaniel sat down next to her. What did it say? She was ready. Ready to go. And somehow, she was trying to comfort me. He nodded, voice low. She's stronger than both of us. There was silence, but it wasn't cold. It wrapped around them like a shared coat of grief and hope. That evening, Dr. Patel came with updates. The gene markers have started shifting, he explained. It's not definitive, but it's promising. Her blood shows reduced mutation expression. Her immune system is stabilizing. I haven't seen numbers like this before, not this early. Diane clutched Nathaniel's arm. So, it's working? It's too soon to say with certainty, Dr. Patel replied. But yes, the data is encouraging. Oh, the next morning, Anna awoke with more color in her cheeks. I feel like soup today, she declared. Diane laughed, crying through it. Then soup it is. Over the next days, her energy slowly returned. She still tired easily, but her appetite grew, and her curiosity returned. She asked more questions about the machines, about the doctors, even about the stars. One night, while coloring next to Nathaniel, she asked quietly, "Do you think people can really change?" He looked up. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "Because everyone says you used to be mean. But I never saw that." "Maybe they were wrong." Nathaniel set his pen down. "They weren't wrong. I used to think success meant stepping on people. That it meant winning, even if others lost. What changed? You," he said simply. "You and your mom. You made me want to be someone I'd be proud for you to know." Anna tilted her head. "So, maybe people aren't just one thing. Maybe they're like puzzles. You have to keep putting the pieces in the right place." He smiled. "That's a beautiful way to say it." Later that week, Monica arrived in Boston. She brought good news: the Anna Cross Foundation had surpassed its funding goal by over $2 million. Dozens of families had applied for assistance. Several research hospitals wanted to collaborate. The foundation had become a movement. But she also brought a warning. "Ballard's team has gone quiet," she said to Nathaniel in a private conversation outside the hospital room. "No statements, no appeals, no leaks. That's not normal." "He's buying time," Nathaniel guessed, "waiting for the next opening." Monica nodded. "He may try to discredit you through back channels. We've received inquiries from 2 tabloids. Someone's trying to revive stories from your early years. Old lawsuits, executive firings. Let them," Nathaniel said. "I won't hide from my past, and I won't let him cast a shadow over what we're doing now." Back in the room, Anna was drawing a picture of her and Diane under a big tree, with Nathaniel standing beside them, holding a kite. The sky above was filled with stars and words in block letters. "Hope lives here." Diane leaned over. "What's the kite for?" "It's for people we miss," Anna said. "We let it go, and it carries our love up high." That night, Nathaniel found himself in the hospital chapel. He hadn't been to church in years. The stained glass windows glowed in the dim light, casting colors on the pews. He didn't kneel, didn't pray. Exactly. But he sat, breathing in the silence. "If you're listening," he said into the quiet, "don't let me fail her. Don't let me fall short again." As he walked back to the room, he found Diane waiting in the hallway. "I got an email today," she said. "From Anna's school. Her old teacher wants to know if she'll be back in the spring." And?" I said. "Maybe," Diane replied. "Because maybe's the best we've had in a long time." They walked in together and saw Anna asleep, holding the drawing with the kite. Diane took Nathaniel's hand, and they stood there silent, united not in mourning, not in fear, but in a shared breath of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, love could rewrite even the hardest stories. A cold drizzle fell over Boston that morning, casting gray streaks across the hospital windows. Nathaniel stood at the corner of the room, coffee cooling in his hand, eyes locked on Anna's peaceful face. Despite the bleak weather, her color had returned more each day. Her cheeks had plumped, and her voice, once fragile, now carried a quiet confidence. The therapy was working miraculously. Yet peace still eluded him. Diane entered quietly, her coat damp, a sheen of rain on her cheeks. She shook out her umbrella and caught his glance. "You slept here again," she said softly. "I didn't want to miss anything. You look like you haven't blinked in 10 hours. He smiled faintly. "Maybe I haven't." She crossed the room and handed him a small container. "Blueberry muffins. From that place on Boylston." You remember? He did. Their old spot. He nodded in thanks and took a bite. Still warm, she leaned beside the window, gazing out at the city. Dr. Patel says she could be released in 2 weeks, if her numbers hold. That soon? He said, startled by the speed. She'll still need outpatient care, monitoring. But yes, home might not be so far off. Nathaniel nodded, and silence fell again. Not uncomfortable, but weighty. Then Diane said quietly, "There's something I didn't tell you." His eyes flicked up. "What is it?" "I got a call. From someone claiming to represent Ballard. No name. Just a voicemail. He said to stop parading the girl in front of cameras, that if I valued her safety, I'd back away from the foundation." Nathaniel's blood turned cold. "When?" 2 nights ago. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew your reaction would be rage. And we don't need rage right now. We need clarity." He stood, jaw clenched. "I'll handle it." She caught his arm. "Promise me you won't let this spiral." "She needs us calm, Nathaniel. Not at war." He took a breath, nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but I'm doubling her security." That evening, Monica arrived unexpectedly. Her face was tight, and she pulled Nathaniel into the hallway. "We've confirmed it," she said. "Ballard is leaking documents to a foreign tabloid trying to stir up an old narrative that you faked your philanthropic shift for public image. They're calling the foundation a smokescreen." Nathaniel exhaled. "He's going international now?" "Yes. He's desperate cornered, but still dangerous." "Let them publish," Nathaniel said. "We'll counter every lie with proof. I won't run from my past." Monica hesitated. "There's more." "We traced the voicemail to a burner phone purchased in New York cash only." "But the voice?" "One of my analysts swears it matches a former Horizon consultant." Ballard's inner circle. Nathaniel's hands curled into fists. "He's trying to scare us into silence. He's trying to fracture you," she said. "Make you pull back. Make you question your footing." Nathaniel looked toward Anna's room. "He doesn't understand. He's not fighting the same man anymore." The next morning, Nathaniel held a private press event at the hospital's media center, not a public spectacle, but a controlled gathering of a few trusted journalists. No cameras, no bright lights. "I won't entertain anonymous threats," he said, "and I won't stop building something that helps children like my daughter. If my past mistakes cast shadows, so be it. But I choose to walk through them, not hide beneath them." Afterward, he returned to the room to find Anna working on a project folding paper cranes. Dozens of them lay scattered on her tray. "What are you making?" he asked. "Wishes," she said. "One for every kid here. I saw it in a storybook. If you make 1,000, a miracle happens." He smiled. "You believe that?" "I believe in trying." That night, Diane sat beside Anna's bed, humming a soft tune from her childhood while Anna drifted to sleep. Nathaniel stood by the doorway, watching mother and daughter framed in warm lamplight. Later, when Diane came out, she handed him one of the cranes. "She wanted you to have this one. Said it's the wish for extra bravery." He held the fragile paper between his fingers, heart aching. "She's giving away all her hope, piece by piece." "No," Diane said. "She's planting it." A few days later, the threats took a sharper turn. Security discovered an unauthorized attempt to access the hospital database, someone searching for patient schedules and staff logs. It was quickly shut down, but the intent was clear. "They're probing for a weakness," Monica said over the phone. "A blind spot." Nathaniel didn't hesitate. "We move her." Diane agreed, though the thought of relocating Anna again brought its own kind of terror. But the hospital supported the decision, arranging a secure transport to a more private facility on the outskirts of the city. On the way there, Anna sat quietly between them, holding both their hands. "Are we running again?" she asked. "No," Nathaniel said gently. "We're just changing skies." The new facility was smaller but beautifully designed, more like a home than a clinic. Wood floors, soft lighting, rooms with windows that overlooked a garden. Anna's suite even had a small patio. She settled in quickly, folding more cranes, decorating the space with laughter and light. That night, as Diane tucked her in, Anna whispered, "I feel safe here." And Diane believed her. But outside those serene walls, the storm was gathering once more. Ballard's reach hadn't ended. It had merely grown quieter, and Nathaniel knew if they were going to protect Anna, they had to stop hiding. They had to finish what they started. The morning sun poured through the windows of the new clinic, brushing the room in a golden hue. Anna sat at a small table by the window, folding another paper crane with practiced hands. Her smile was softer now, calmer. The peace of this new place had settled into her bones. But Nathaniel, seated nearby with a laptop open, felt the weight of unfinished business tightening like a rope around his chest. Ballard was still out there, silent, lurking, but undeniably dangerous. Every step forward in Anna's treatment felt like a countdown clock ticking in his mind. One wrong move, one moment of complacency, and the fragile world they had built would shatter again. Monica called just before noon. "He's meeting someone today." A lawyer, high profile, connected to several international litigation cases. Not the kind of guy you call if you're planning to retire quietly. Nathaniel stood, stepping into the hallway. "Where?" "Manhattan. We've tracked his movements. He's being discreet, but he's slipped." Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair. "Is there enough to move federal interest?" "There might be, but they're slow. Careful. I think we need to hit him before he hits you." A beat passed. "What do you have in mind?" Nathaniel asked. "A controlled leak, something that forces his hand." "We bait him. Bring the battle into the open." Nathaniel thought of Anna, her tiny fingers creasing paper into hope. "Do it, but quietly." That night, while Anna slept and Diane stepped out to take a call, Nathaniel sat alone in the room. The sounds of the clinic were muted, the air thick with the scent of eucalyptus from the nearby diffuser. His eyes drifted toward Anna's breathing, steady and soft. He opened his email and drafted a letter. Not to an investor, not to a judge, but to Anna. "Dear Anna, if you ever read this, it means the world got loud again. Maybe too loud for me to speak, but I want you to know something, that everything I did, everything I became, it changed the moment I saw you smile. You weren't just a little girl with an illness. You were the mirror I didn't know I needed. You showed me the parts of myself I had buried. And you gave me a reason to fight. If I fail at everything else, I hope I never fail at being someone you can believe in." He paused, stared at the blinking cursor, then saved the letter in his drafts without sending it. The next day, the leak dropped. A former Horizon employee, once silenced by legal threats, had come forward with new evidence: recorded meetings, financial ledgers, offshore transfers. The material directly tied Ballard to falsified documents and coordinated retaliation efforts against whistleblowers. The documents had been sanitized and distributed to reputable journalists. By evening, 3 major networks were running pieces, and social media boiled with outrage. Nathaniel watched the coverage from the clinic lounge, his heart pounding. Monica called. "He's made contact with his foreign partners. He's panicking." This was the push. Is he still in the country? "For now." Nathaniel stood. "We end this." Diane walked in moments later, having sensed the shift in energy. "What did you do?" she asked. "I put the spotlight where it belongs," he replied. Ballard won't hide behind silence anymore. She didn't look surprised. "What happens if he fights back harder?" "Then we fight smarter." That night, a storm rolled in lightning, carving through the sky above the clinic. Anna stood at the window, watching it with wonder. "Isn't it scary?" Diane asked, sitting beside her. "A little," Anna admitted. "But also beautiful. It's like the sky is speaking." Nathaniel watched from the doorway, her words echoing inside him. The next morning, federal agents arrested Ballard at a private airfield in upstate New York. He had been hours away from boarding a jet registered under a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The footage was broadcast everywhere. An aging man in cuffs, head down, finally cornered. Nathaniel got the call just after breakfast. "We got him," Monica said. He didn't celebrate. Just nodded, letting the quiet wash over him. When he returned to Anna's room, she was coloring again, this time a tree with roots that reached deep into the page and branches that touched the edges. "It's our family tree," she explained. "Except the roots are growing." not just holding us down. Nathaniel sat beside her. That's a smart tree. She beamed. It's a strong one. That evening, Diane found Nathaniel on the clinic terrace, staring out over the city as the clouds parted. It's done, she said. He nodded. It's beginning. She stepped beside him, hands in her coat pockets. Do you regret it? Any of it? He shook his head. Only the years I wasted before. Diane looked at him, eyes soft. She's going to remember this time forever. I hope she remembers the calm, he said. Not the war. Diane leaned against him, and together they watched the lights flicker on across the horizon. Somewhere below, Ballard sat in a holding cell. Alone. Powerless. A man stripped of his armor. But up here, above the noise, a new story was taking shape, one of healing, of redemption, of a family no longer broken but mending, one heartbeat at a time. Winter came early that year, draping Boston in sheets of frost. The trees outside the clinic stood bare, limbs skeletal against gray skies. Inside, the warmth of the common room glowed with soft lamps and the hum of quiet laughter. Anna sat curled up on a beanbag chair, wrapped in a flannel blanket, reading a book about stars. Nathaniel sat across the room, watching her. Every so often, she would look up and smile, as if sensing his gaze. It still caught him off guard, the ease with which she moved through the world now. As if the pain and the needles and the nights of trembling had belonged to someone else. But healing, he was learning, was not always loud. Sometimes it was in the silence, in the space between words. In a child who smiled just because she could, Diane entered, her hands tucked into the sleeves of a cable-knit sweater. She nodded at Nathaniel, then crossed to Anna. Time to check your temperature, little star, she said gently. Anna sighed with mock drama, setting her book aside. Again? I'm not even warm. Rules are rules, Diane replied with a smile. Nathaniel watched them, a quiet ache stirring in his chest. It wasn't sadness, not quite, but something adjacent. A reminder of the time he had lost, of the things he might never fully reclaim. Later that evening, Nathaniel sat alone on the back patio of the clinic. Snow had started to fall, light and steady, catching in the folds of his coat. His phone buzzed beside him. It was Monica. Update, she said without greeting. Ballard's formally charged on multiple counts. The federal case is strong. His legal team's already negotiating a plea. Nathaniel leaned back. What's he asking for? Reduced time, medical accommodations. He's claiming health issues, heart, vision, stress-related ailments. He chuckled coldly. Of course he is. No. You want to push for full prosecution? Monica asked. The DA's office will follow your lead. Nathaniel didn't answer immediately. A gust of wind carried the scent of pine and smoke. I want what's just, he said finally. Nothing less. But no revenge. Not anymore. He ended the call and sat in the quiet, letting the cold settle around him. Then, from behind, a soft voice broke the silence. You look lonely. It was Anna. Barefoot, wrapped in her blanket, her eyes big against the dark. You're supposed to be sleeping, he said, trying to sound stern. I wanted to see the snow. He reached out and scooped her onto his lap. She curled against him without hesitation. Will he go to jail? She asked after a pause. Yes, Nathaniel said. He will. Good, she murmured. He was mean. Nathaniel hesitated. People like him. They do terrible things because they think no one will stop them, and for a long time no one did. But you did. He held her tighter. Not alone. She yawned. Do you think people like that can ever change? Nathaniel looked at the snow, falling steady like forgiveness. I think people can choose to change. But not all of them want to. They sat in silence, snow dusting their shoulders. I don't want to be scared anymore, she whispered. You don't have to be. I'm here. Your mom's here. We're not going anywhere. She looked up. Promise? Promise. Inside, Diane watched them from the window, her heart aching with something almost too large to name. The next day, Nathaniel received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter handwritten, mailed from a federal holding facility. The return address was clear. T. Ballard. He opened it with cautious fingers. Cross. I suppose this is where I ask for forgiveness, or offer some kind of remorse. But you'd see through that. So I'll spare us both the performance. You won. You and your golden narrative. The child, the disease, the redemption arc. The world loves a clean ending. But I know you. We're not that different. We made our fortunes the same way on silence, on fear. You just got off the train earlier than I did. Don't pat yourself on the back too hard. You still have ghosts. We both do. There was no signature. Nathaniel read it twice, then burned it in the clinic fireplace. Anna would never see those words. She deserved better. That night, he spoke at a small fundraiser for the foundation. Nothing flashy. Just a quiet gathering of donors, doctors, and families impacted by the trials. Diane joined him, holding Anna's hand as they sat near the front. When he took the podium, the room hushed. I used to think legacy meant buildings, numbers, press clippings, he began. But I've learned it's something much quieter. It's what we leave in people's hearts. In the stories that come after us. Oh, he looked at Anna, then at Diane. This foundation isn't about me. It never was. It's about every child who was told to wait, every parent who had to choose between hope and reality, every whisper that said, "You don't matter." We're here to shout back, "Yes, you do." The applause was warm, real. Not for Nathaniel, but for the truth. Afterward, an older man approached him. Gray hair, thick glasses, hands trembling slightly. "My grandson's in treatment," he said, "because of what you built. I just wanted to say, thank you. And I forgive you. For whatever came before." Nathaniel's throat tightened. "Thank you," he said, barely above a whisper. Later that night, back at the clinic, Anna handed him a new crane. "This one's for forgiveness," she said. "You don't have to tell me why, just keep it." And he did. Not because he needed to be forgiven, but because he was finally ready to forgive himself. The first time Anna took a step without assistance, it was snowing again. Thick flakes fell from the morning sky, covering the courtyard of the clinic in a white hush. Diane had just stepped out to fetch Anna's latest blood work, and Nathaniel was reading beside her in the sunroom, a book half forgotten in his lap. Anna had been sitting quietly, her gaze locked on the glass door leading to the garden. "I want to feel the snow," she said suddenly. Nathaniel looked up. "You want me to bring some in? I can do that." "No," she said, already sliding her legs off the couch. "I want to feel it under my feet." He hesitated, setting his book aside, heart leaping with both joy and caution. "Anna, I can try." She stood slowly, hands gripping the armrest for balance. Her knees trembled, but she straightened, chin raised. For weeks, she had walked with assistance, always holding onto something, always under watchful eyes. But this time was different. Nathaniel stepped forward instinctively, arms raised to catch her if she faltered. But she shook her head. "Don't help me." He froze, one foot in front of the other. She crossed the tiled floor 5 steps, 10. Her breath came fast, but her face beamed with fierce determination. She reached the door, gripped the handle, and turned to look at him. "Can you open it?" Nathaniel did, his hands barely steady. Cold air rushed in. Anna stepped out onto the snow-covered path, her slippers pressing into the white. "I remember this feeling," she whispered. "From before." She turned her face toward the sky and closed her eyes. The snow caught on her eyelashes, on her cheeks, in her curls. Diane returned moments later and stopped dead in the hallway. "She's Nathaniel?" He looked at her, eyes shining. "She's doing it. On her own." Diane ran to the door, tears falling freely. She didn't stop her, didn't shout, just stood there, watching their daughter walk barefoot into a world she had almost never seen again. The nurses took photos. One framed it later and gifted it to Diane on Anna's discharge day. In it, Anna stood in the snow, arms stretched wide, the sun just breaking through behind her. That photo would hang in the entryway of their new home. Because yes, Anna was going home. 2 weeks later, the clinic threw a quiet farewell celebration. Streamers, cupcakes, warm hugs from staff who had become family. Monica flew in for the occasion, bringing with her news of the Foundation's latest expansion, 3 new hospitals partnering in the Midwest, a grant from a major health organization, and early talks with government agencies to build a federal research division dedicated to rare pediatric illnesses. "You started a fire," she told Nathaniel as they stood near the refreshment table. "I just lit the match," he replied. The rest came from her. Across the room, Anna laughed as she played cards with 2 other young patients. Her hair was growing back. Her skin was vibrant. She looked alive. Diane joined them a few minutes later, holding a folder. "Her final test results," she said softly. "They're stable, better than expected. Patel says she might qualify for experimental maintenance therapy at home, monitored weekly." Nathaniel exhaled, slow and deep. "And the prognosis? Cautiously optimistic," which, coming from him, might as well be shouting. They didn't celebrate loudly. There were no fireworks. Just a quiet, tearful embrace in the corner of the room. Sometimes, victory was found in whispers. Moving back into the world was surreal. They rented a small house just outside the city, near a lake. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't gated. But it had a fireplace and big windows, and a porch where Anna could sip cocoa wrapped in her blanket. It was perfect. Anna returned to school part-time that spring. Her classmates welcomed her with wide eyes and handmade cards. Her teacher, Mr. Callahan, choked up when she walked through the door. "I was afraid you wouldn't come back," he admitted later. "We all were." Anna smiled. "I came back different." He smiled through tears. "You came back stronger." Diane found part-time work at a local library, something she could do while keeping her schedule flexible. The rhythm of normal life returned slowly, like a song relearned: groceries, bills, laundry, but also laughter, dinner at the table, telling stories before bed. Nathaniel split his time between the Foundation's Boston office and the house. He insisted on driving Anna to her weekly appointments himself. One night, as they drove back from the clinic, Anna looked out the window and said, "Do you think bad people ever feel sorry?" Nathaniel glanced at her. "Some do. Some pretend to. Some never do." She nodded. "Ballard. He wasn't just mean. He was scared, too. I could see it in his eyes on the news." Nathaniel said nothing for a moment. Then, "Maybe he was. But fear doesn't excuse harm." Anna looked thoughtful. "Maybe. But I hope he learns something. Even in jail." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "You have a bigger heart than most grown-ups I know." She grinned. "I learned from my mom." At home, Diane was waiting with warm apple pie. They ate together, Anna retelling parts of her day, complete with voices and dramatic pauses. Later, as Nathaniel tucked her in, she held his hand and whispered, "You stayed. I told you I would, even though you were scared." He kissed her forehead. "Especially because I was scared." Outside her window, the stars blinked in silence. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Nathaniel believed that maybe, just maybe, the future could be as bright as those stars, if they just kept walking toward it. Together, the house near the lake had a quiet rhythm of its own, mornings filled with birdsong, afternoons with books and gentle laughter, and evenings wrapped in firelight and the scent of cinnamon tea. By all appearances, it was a return to normalcy. But for Nathaniel, Diane, and Anna, it was something deeper. It was a second chance at a life they had never thought possible. Spring melted into summer, and with it came subtle transformations. Anna's cheeks now carried the rosy glow of good health. Her energy returned in full. She was no longer the quiet, cautious child that Nathaniel had first met in that sterile hospital room. She was vibrant, inquisitive, and disarmingly wise. One afternoon, while Diane and Anna were out grocery shopping, Nathaniel sat alone on the back porch, watching the lake shimmer beneath the late sun. He had spent months building a life that centered around healing Anna, shielding her from pain, from fear, from the ghosts of his past. Now, those ghosts felt more like echoes, distant and fading. His phone rang. "Monica, I got word from the Attorney General's office," she said. "They're issuing a formal statement next week. Full acknowledgement of Ballard's wrongdoing, systemic failures at Horizon, and your efforts in exposing it all." Nathaniel nodded slowly. It won't undo the damage. No, Monica said. But it's the beginning of something honest. There was a pause. Then she added, they want you to speak at the Capitol next month. Congressional Committee. Healthcare Oversight. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Is that wise? They think it matters. That hearing your story, seeing Anna's journey, it might be what pushes some long overdue reforms. Nathaniel hesitated. Let me talk to Diane. Of course, Monica said. But Nathaniel, you're not just her father, you're her proof. That night, as the moon rose silver over the lake, he shared the news with Diane. I don't want to pull us back into that world, he said. Not after we finally found quiet. Diane studied him carefully. But if that world hasn't changed, how many more children like Anna will slip through the cracks? He looked down at his hands. I'm tired, Dee. I know, she said gently, but I also know you won't be able to sit still if this passes without you speaking. You'll regret it. Nathaniel met her gaze. I'll only do it if you and Anna come with me. She nodded. Then we'll go together. The following week was filled with preparation. Monica arranged media training, helped him refine his statements. The Foundation's board sent their support. Former patients wrote letters, sharing how Anna's story had inspired them to seek help, to advocate for change in their own communities. Anna, for her part, seemed thrilled by the idea of a trip to D.C. Can we see the Lincoln Memorial? She asked one night at dinner. Only if you promise not to give him one of your cranes, Nathaniel joked. I might, she said mischievously. He looks like he could use a wish. When the day arrived, they flew out together, just the three of them, tucked into a quiet corner of the cabin. Nathaniel kept a journal on his lap, thumbing through the speech he had rewritten a dozen times. At the Capitol, the atmosphere was heavy with expectation. Reporters lingered outside, cameras poised. Inside, the committee chamber buzzed with hushed conversations. Anna sat quietly beside Diane in the gallery, hands folded over her lap, a single paper crane tucked in her pocket. When Nathaniel took the stand, there was no flash, no dramatics, just a man, standing to tell the truth. I was part of the problem, he began. For years, I turned a blind eye to systems that favored profit over people. I justified it. I called it business. But the day I met Anna, all of that collapsed. Because no amount of wealth can explain to a child why no one came sooner. He paused, scanning the room. This isn't just about one man's crimes. It's about the systems that protected him, the silence that enabled him, and the children who paid the price. We cannot keep choosing comfort over justice. The room was still. Even the cameras seemed to pause. When he stepped down, there were no cheers. Just the quiet acknowledgement of truth. Afterward, outside the Capitol, reporters swarmed. Nathaniel shielded Anna gently as Diane spoke on their behalf. We didn't come to be heroes, she said. We came because silence was no longer an option. That night, back in the hotel room, Anna climbed into Nathaniel's lap, curling against him. You were brave today, she said. I was scared. Brave and scared can happen at the same time, she whispered. He kissed her head. You taught me that. Oh. She pulled the crane from her pocket and placed it in his hand. It's for the people who haven't been heard yet. You can pass it to them. Nathaniel looked at the tiny folded wings and felt something shift in his chest, something deeper than pride. It was hope. Not just for Anna, but for a better world. A week later, legislation began to move through Congress, measures aimed at strengthening protections for rare disease patients, regulating pharmaceutical transparency, and expanding federal research into pediatric care. It was far from perfect, but it was a start. Back at home, the lake was as still as ever. The paper cranes now filled an entire corner of Anna's room, hundreds of them. Each one a quiet testament to a journey that had nearly ended before it began. Nathaniel watched her sleep one night, blanket tucked under her chin, the soft rise and fall of her chest like a melody. Diane stood behind him, arms wrapped around his waist. You did it, she whispered. No, he said, turning to her. We did, and outside, the wind carried the scent of rain. But this time, it smelled like renewal, like beginnings, like peace. Late summer rolled into early autumn, and with it came a hush that settled over their home like a familiar blanket. The world had begun to move on. The headlines faded, the phone calls from press slowed, but the real work of healing, of building, of continuing never stopped. Anna returned to school full-time in September. Her classmates welcomed her with signs and cupcakes. But within days, she was simply Anna again. No longer the girl from the news, no longer the sick kid, just another curious mind in a room full of stories waiting to be written. Nathaniel sat on the porch one afternoon, watching yellow leaves drift down from the trees, coffee cooling in his hands. Diane was inside reading, the dog snoozing at her feet. Life had found a rhythm he hadn't dared dream of. And yet, a familiar unease lingered. One he couldn't quite name. His phone buzzed with a message from Monica. FDA wants to discuss fast-tracking the new trial protocol. Patel's data is turning heads. He smiled. Progress. Real, measurable progress. The kind that meant fewer children would fall through cracks so wide they became graves. But beneath the pride was exhaustion. Nathaniel hadn't stopped moving since the day Anna had entered his life. Each battle had forged new purpose. Yes, but it had also drained something from him. That evening, over dinner, Diane noticed the shadows in his eyes. "You haven't been sleeping," she said. "I'm fine," he replied, not looking up from his plate. She reached over, placed her hand on his. "You've been carrying this so long, you don't know what it feels like to set it down." He looked at her, something in his chest unraveling. "If I stop, what if everything falls apart again?" Diane squeezed his hand. "Then we rebuild it. Together. But you can't outrun the quiet forever." He didn't answer, but he heard her. The following weekend, Nathaniel took a solo trip to the mountains, a cabin 2 hours north. No signal, no noise. Just wind, trees, and the ache of being alone with himself. It wasn't comfort he sought, but clarity. He brought only a journal, a single photograph of Anna, and the letter she had once written him. "Don't forget to breathe." Each morning, he rose with the sun and walked the trails, letting the silence press in around him like balm. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to grieve not just for what he had lost, but for the man he had been. On the third night, under a sky cracked open with stars, he sat by the fire and opened the journal. "I don't know how to stop. Not really. I've built my entire life around fixing, proving, protecting. And now that there's nothing to fight, I'm scared I don't know who I am anymore. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't have to be the warrior all the time. Maybe I get to just be Dad." When he returned home 3 days later, Anna ran into his arms like he'd been gone a month. "I made you something," she said, dragging him to her room. It was a collage, photos, sketches, magazine cutouts. In the center, a drawing of the three of them. Nathaniel, Diane, and Anna, standing on a hill with cranes flying overhead. "What's this?" he asked, eyes wide. "It's our next chapter," she said, matter-of-factly. "Every book has one. Even when you think the story's over." Diane appeared in the doorway, smiling. "We were thinking, maybe it's time for something new." Nathaniel looked between them. "New how?" "Something small. But ours," Diane said. "There's a bookstore in town for sale. Needs a lot of work. But it has a reading room, space for events, and a tiny garden in the back." Anna beamed. "And a coffee machine." Nathaniel blinked, startled. "You want to open a bookstore?" Diane nodded. "A place for people to gather. To breathe. To learn. And maybe for you to rest, too." He laughed, a sound that surprised even him. "Books and coffee. That's how you're planning to save me?" Anna leaned her head on his arm. "It's how we're going to save each other." And somehow, that made perfect sense. Over the next 2 months, they poured themselves into the space painting walls, scraping old floors, stocking shelves with donated books. Friends and neighbors came to help. Former patients sent boxes of their favorite titles, and slowly, the store came alive. They named it Second Light. On opening day, the town came in droves. Anna read aloud in the children's corner. Diane made cinnamon coffee. Nathaniel sat behind the register, watching laughter echo off the newly painted walls. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he had to be anywhere else. That evening, after they closed, Anna handed him a new paper crane. "This one," she said softly, "is for starting over." Nathaniel placed it on a shelf behind the counter, beside the photograph of them in the snow. No headlines, no battles, just the quiet, steady rhythm of a family choosing each other every single day. And in that quiet, Nathaniel finally understood. Peace was not the absence of struggle. It was the presence of love, freely given, without condition or fear. It was in the sound of pages turning, in the laughter of a child who once didn't know if she'd grow up, in the way Diane smiled when the shop bell rang, in the choice to stay, to begin again. The first letter came in a plain white envelope, no return address, no postmark. It arrived tucked between utility bills and a catalog, as ordinary as any other piece of mail. Nathaniel didn't recognize the handwriting, but something about the way his name was written tight, deliberate, made his stomach turn. He opened it at the kitchen counter while Diane brewed tea and Anna hummed a tune from her music class upstairs. Inside, a single sentence: "You can't build a new life on top of bones." There was no signature. He read it twice, then folded it and slipped it into his coat pocket. He didn't mention it to Diane. Not yet. He told himself it was nothing, maybe a leftover from the trial. Some disgruntled figure from the shadows of his past. People held grudges. He knew that. But still, the words lingered. The next day, the bell above Second Light jingled just before closing. Nathaniel looked up from the register and froze. A man stood in the doorway, early 60s, neatly dressed in a tan overcoat, his eyes cold and assessing. "Mr. Cross," the man said with a thin smile. Nathaniel stood slowly. "Can I help you?" "You don't remember me," the man said. "But I knew your father." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't know my father had friends," the man chuckled. He didn't. But he had partners, associates, people who helped keep his affairs clean. Nathaniel said nothing. The man took a step closer, lowering his voice. "We know what you did, Nathaniel. With the Horizon files. The investigation. The testimony." Nathaniel's heartbeat quickened. "It was public record." "Sure," the man said. "But what you don't understand is that some ghosts don't like being dragged into the light." Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. "Are you threatening my family?" The man tilted his head. "I'm reminding you. There are layers to power. You may have exposed Ballard, but there are still people who like the way things were." Nathaniel's voice turned to steel. "Get out." The man paused, then smiled again, unbothered, as if he'd expected the response. He pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the counter. "Call me if you ever want to know the whole story. About your father, about yourself." Then he turned and walked out into the rain. Nathaniel stared at the card. No name, just a number and a symbol in Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in his study long after everyone else had gone to bed. The letter and the card laid side by side on the desk. The ghosts he thought he'd buried weren't just alive, they were knocking. By morning, he'd made a decision. He called Monica. "Someone came to the store," he said, recounting the encounter. "He knew my father." Mentioned the Horizon case. Monica swore under her breath. "Did he say what he wanted?" "Not directly. But he left a card. And a warning." "Do you still have it?" "I do." "Good. I'll run the number. And I'll inform the local authorities." "You need to take this seriously, Nathaniel." "I am." Monica paused. "Do you think Anna's in danger?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm not taking any chances." Security at the store was quietly increased. The locks were changed. Surveillance installed. Diane, though worried, stood firm beside him. "We've been through worse," she said. "We won't let fear dictate our life." But Nathaniel's mind kept circling back, not just to the threat, but to the past. The things he hadn't asked, the truths he hadn't uncovered. His father had been a titan in the pharmaceutical world, long before Horizon. There had always been whispers of corruption, payoffs, disappearances. But Nathaniel had buried that past, convinced himself that his own sins were separate. Now he wasn't so sure. The second letter came a week later. This one was typed. "You think Ballard was the worst of them? He was the beginning. There's more buried, much more. You know where to look." No signature. But this time, it came with an address, an old storage facility in Delaware. Long abandoned. It had once belonged to a holding company that, Monica later confirmed, was linked to Nathaniel's father's first biotech firm. He debated whether to go, whether to chase the past one more time, but the truth burned too hot to ignore. He left at dawn, alone, leaving Diane a note that simply read, "I have to know." The storage facility was decrepit, ivy-covered, rusted gates, the air thick with mildew. But inside, in a far corner, beneath a false floorboard, he found a locked metal case. It took him an hour to pry it open. Inside were files, dozens of them. Reports, memos, internal audits, records that tied his father and a small network of executives to clinical trials buried for decades. Trials that had ended in deaths. Cover-ups. Payouts. The kind of darkness that made Ballard look like a middleman. Nathaniel stared at the names. Some were still alive, some still held power, and his father had been at the center of it all. He sat there on the cold floor for a long time, the weight of legacy pressing down on him like stone. When he returned home, he didn't speak for hours. Diane sat beside him, silent, waiting. Finally, he said, "My father. He knew what he was doing. He built his empire on sacrifice. On children like Anna." Diane took his hand. "And you dismantled it. You chose differently. But I carry his name," he said. "His blood." "No," she whispered. "You carry Anna, and the people you've saved. That's what matters." Nathaniel looked at her, then at Anna, who was curled up on the couch, humming to herself as she read. He knew then what he had to do. This wasn't over. The ghosts would not be ignored. But this time, he would not run. Not from the truth, not from the legacy, not from what he had the power to change. He would finish what he started. For Anna. For every child his father's silence had buried. For the man he refused to become, and the serpent he would cut off its head. The courthouse steps were cold beneath Nathaniel's feet, the morning air sharp with the scent of turning leaves and distant rain. He stood still for a long moment, watching the street stir to life, buses hissing at stops, pedestrians wrapped in scarves and conversations, the world unaware of the storm he was about to unleash. Monica joined him, file box in hand, her breath visible in the chill. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly. Nathaniel nodded. "Number. But I'm certain it has to be done." Inside the building, reporters already gathered. News had leaked that a new case was being brought forward, one that stretched back decades, implicating not just Ballard, but an entire generation of silent collaborators. Men and women who had built empires on suppressed trials, ignored warnings, and covered up the screams of the vulnerable. Monica placed the documents on the clerk's desk. "Petition for federal investigation," she said, accompanied by corroborated evidence, survivor testimony, and a signed affidavit from Nathaniel Cross. The clerk's eyes widened slightly. "This is substantial." Nathaniel met her gaze. So were the crimes. Once the paperwork was filed, the machine began to move slow, deliberate, grinding. But Nathaniel had learned patience. He had learned that the most important changes rarely came in the form of headlines or speeches. They came in silence. In persistence. That evening, back at Second Light, Anna curled up on the reading bench beside the window, rain tapping gently on the glass. "Did you do it?" she asked as he came through the door. He knelt beside her, kissed her forehead. "I did. Will it fix everything?" "No," he said honestly, "but it's a start." She looked out the window. "Then we just keep going, right?" He smiled. "Right." As days passed, inquiries began. Former executives were subpoenaed. Secret accounts were traced. Quiet settlements that once stayed buried were unearthed. Diane read the articles aloud in the kitchen while Anna built paper cranes in the living room, one for every survivor, every life that deserved acknowledgement. The town watched with reverent pride. What had begun as a personal battle had become something larger, an awakening. The bookstore became more than a shop. It became a haven. People came not just for novels and coffee, but for connection, for healing. Nathaniel held community readings every Thursday. Diane organized health talks. Anna, when her health allowed, ran a crane club, teaching children how to fold their hopes into wings. One day, a woman entered quietly, a former Horizon nurse. Her hands trembled as she approached the counter. "I watched it happen," she said. "I stayed quiet for too long." Nathaniel didn't scold. He listened. And when she was done, he offered her tea, a chair, and a promise. "It's not too late to do the right thing." She testified a week later. Anna's health remained stable. Some days were harder than others: fatigue, a lingering cough, moments where the fear crept back in, but her spirit remained unbroken. She would look at Nathaniel sometimes, eyes so full of unspoken strength, and say, "We've made it this far, haven't we?" On the anniversary of her diagnosis, they didn't throw a party. They sat together on the dock, watching the sun set over the lake. "This is better," Anna whispered. "Quiet. Just us." Nathaniel wrapped an arm around her. "You've grown so much." "Duh." She looked at him. "Do you still think about the past?" "Every day," he admitted. "But now, it doesn't haunt me, it guides me." Anna reached into her bag and pulled out a final paper crane. This one was golden. "For you," she said. "To remember that even when things feel heavy, you carry the light too." He took it with reverence, his voice thick. "You saved me, you know." She smiled. "We saved each other." That night, he placed the golden crane on a shelf beside his father's photo, no longer a symbol of shame, but of reckoning, of closure. Weeks later, a judge approved the formation of a national oversight board, inspired by the Horizon case, to investigate medical ethics violations. Nathaniel was asked to serve as its honorary advisor. He accepted, but only on one condition: the board would be named not after him, but after the children. The Anna Grace Initiative. Anna cried when she found out. "You named it after me?" "No," he said, holding her close. "I named it after the version of you that refused to give up. The one that taught me how to be brave." Life didn't become perfect. The world didn't suddenly heal. But the cracks in the system had been forced into the light. And in that light, others found courage, found voice, found each other. Years later, long after the hearings ended and the cameras left, Nathaniel continued to run Second Light. Diane planted sunflowers in the garden every spring. Anna grew into a young woman with fire in her heart and quiet wisdom in her bones. And on her graduation day, when she stood tall, diploma in hand, healthy, whole, Nathaniel sat in the front row, tears in his eyes, Diane's hand in his. In her speech, Anna said, "I was once a girl who needed to be carried. Now, I carry stories. I carry hope. And I carry forward the truth that even in the darkest places, light survives." After the ceremony, they returned home. The bookstore bustled. The lake shimmered, and Nathaniel, surrounded by the family he had fought for, finally allowed himself to rest, not because the work was done, but because the torch had been passed. And in that peaceful twilight, as cranes danced in the wind and laughter filled the rooms, he understood at last. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it sounded like footsteps on hardwood, like pages turning, like a child whispering, "We're safe now." And that was enough. The story reminds us that true justice isn't measured by headlines or victories in court, but by the quiet, persistent acts of courage we choose every day. It teaches us that healing is possible, even after betrayal and loss. And that love, especially the kind rooted in truth and sacrifice, has the power to rebuild what was once broken. Through Anna's innocence and Nathaniel's redemption, we see that facing the darkness of the past is the first step toward building a future filled with light, hope, and purpose.